What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so jumping back into the events of Infinity Wars, to kind of get you guys caught up for a second, essentially what's going on here is we only really have like 3 worlds going on right now. Like from the perspective of this story, we're only dealing with 3 universes. There's still an infinite number of universes out there, but from this perspective, we're only dealing with 3 universes right now. The main Marvel universe has really just kind of been annihilated in its entirety. Then you have Soul World, and then you have, of course, the Quarry of Creation. And again, like we've talked about this in the previous videos, that with Soul World, Soul World was never a whole universe, right? Like Soul World was just like a little pocket dimension. Like imagine that you lived in a universe that was the size of like New York City. And that's basically what Soul World was. It was a tiny little localized space inside of the Soul Stone. And it was kept small because so few people ever wielded it that the space that was needed to house them was always very, very small. But the fact remains, Loki had basically taken the Infinity Stones as they existed in the real world, in the main Marvel universe, and basically stole them from everybody in Soul World. But then you've also got a second set of Infinity Stones that reside within Soul World. And so what had basically gone on here is that with Loki taking these stones and then leaving for the purpose of trying to achieve whatever this greater goal happened to be, with us never really being told what it was, as soon as he gets out into the main Marvel universe, what we end up finding out is there's nothing there anymore. That all you really have is just kind of like this huge, vast, empty space. And then you have the Celestials themselves. And the Celestials never talk. And that's one of the things to bear in mind when it comes to the Celestials in Marvel Comics. And that's why when Loki addresses them, they never speak to him. And instead, one of them just kind of points over to a particular direction. Loki goes and looks. He looks into a mirror. We don't see what Loki sees. That's never offered as an explanation to us. He's basically, he kind of pulls back the tapestry and he sees what awaits for him. And then he basically just kind of quits. He basically gives up and says, yep, that's pretty much it. And it's kind of lackluster. In reality, it makes sense if that's something that's revealed later on down the line, but it's not. Loki just pulls back the tapestry and just says, yep, so this is basically kind of like a zero sum, and then leaves. And it really seems more like Jerry Dugan's way of just kind of saying, okay, we have to wrap this up somehow, and we can't really explore what goes on with Loki, so we'll just kind of write it off, we'll be done, and then Loki will leave, and that will be it. So he essentially comes back with the Soul Stones from Soul World, because of course they work within that localized space and work within the Quarry of Creation. And when he brings them back, they're basically given to what's left of Adam Warlock's Infinity Watch team, and then Loki just kind of jumps on his boat and then just sails off back to Omnipotent City, and that's the end of that. It's kind of weird. It really kind of seems to come out of left field. But the fact remains that going back to Soul World, again, you have Devondra, and that's kind of the interesting thing. This is one of the interesting things that Jerry Dugan did. He's very much taking a page out of Jim Starlin. And what I mean here is that for years and years, for decades, Galactus just had this hunger. And more often than not, the hunger of Galactus was attributed to the fact that he was born out of a dead universe into a new one. And the role he plays is to basically ensure that like the celestial population doesn't go unchecked when they plant their seeds inside of a planet, so that planet will give birth to a new celestial. Galactus goes around and consumes planets, so the celestials don't just plant their seed everywhere and then you've got a universe overrun with celestials. When Jim Starlin came along and wrote the Thanos miniseries, what he established was that the hunger of Galactus was actually like an other dimensional entity. Now, it was a terrible story and it was a terrible idea, but Jerry Dugan's kind of taking a page out of that by saying that the reason why the Soul Stone hungers for souls is because it houses the being Devondra. And that had never really been explained up to this point. It was just the being Devondra is there. And we were never really given an explanation of what role Devondra plays, outside of the fact that it just consumes everything inside. And what seems to have gone on here is that where the Soul Stone came into existence when the entity Nemesis scattered its essence across the universe in the form of the Infinity Stones, that when the Soul Stone came into existence, Devondra was born inside the Soul Stone. And when that happened, Devondra had a constant hunger to consume souls. The difference here is that when Infinity Wars happened and Gamora basically took all the life in the main Marvel universe, put it all inside of the Soul World, and then bent it onto itself to basically start merging people in order to essentially conserve space, that what this did is it basically opened Devondra up to the idea that there's just like all these different beings that are out there now that it can eat. So it just kind of went on like a feeding frenzy, consuming like everything it could come across until it happened to come across the heroes here. And so the result is that they're basically fighting off against it as best they can. And that's really kind of just what's going on at the moment. They're just fighting off against it as best they can. And so again, things get wrapped up pretty quickly because, in order to kind of deal with this threat, what the Incredible Hulk does is use the Space Stone, run up on Devondra, create a black hole inside the entity, which literally just like sucks it into this singularity. And that's the end of Devondra. It gets wrapped up like that. And again, that's kind kind of a common theme in the story is that things just kind of get wrapped up in like one page, and it's just kind of like, okay. And so then you turn around and you have Adam Warlock, who sits down and says, the main Marvel universe has basically been wiped out. All you have is the universe inside Soul World, and then like they've left the Quarry of Creation. So all that's left right now is the main Marvel universe folded onto itself in Soul World. And so Adam Warlock's idea is to basically restore everything back to normal. The quandary that Adam Warlock has, and what Jerry Dugan kind of toys with here, is what the aftermath will be. Will it simply be a reboot, which is what Marvel should have done out of Secret Wars, or is everything going to go back to normal? And the reality is that everything's going to go back to normal. Everything's going to kind of reset the way it was. The thing that you take away from this is that the Infinity Warps universe is basically copied, right? So I mean, imagine it's a piece of paper. A piece of paper has just been folded onto itself. Like, that's what Gamora did. She took a piece of paper, which was the main Marvel universe, folded it onto itself, and then put it inside Soul World. And that's Infinity Warps. That's the universe that exists in Soul World. What Adam Warlock is going to do is he's going to copy that folded piece of paper, and then he's going to take it out of Soul World, then he's going to unfold it, and that's going to be the main Marvel universe going back to normal. And it kind of makes sense in terms of just fixing everything. The issue that they have here is that there's basically like they can't leave Infinity Warps inside the Soul World forever. Like, they can't leave it there for all time. And so what they end up doing is creating basically like two universes, and then in turn just sort of dispersing everything among those two universes. And so it restores Infinity Warps and it restores the main Marvel universe. Now what this does going forward is it lays the groundwork for Marvel to start exploring Infinity Warps, which in reality, I mean, they kind of tease it a little bit with regards to the actual Infinity War story. I didn't read any of them because none of them interested me. But, you know, it does leave the door open for them to start exploring that, or to do whatever they want with that universe, turn it into the Ultimate Universe or anything along those lines. They can essentially do whatever they want here. And so once everything goes back to normal, then Adam Warlock kind of has the second struggle, which is, can we go back and undo all of this? Like, is it possible to change all this? And that's one of the things he kind of deals with here. One of the things to bear in mind, and this is one of the things that Jim Starlin discussed in Infinity, I can't remember which one it was, but it was the one where Thanos enters the mind of Adam Warlock and Adam Warlock enters the mind of Thanos to see how the other views all of creation, how they view themselves and how they view the universe and so on. And one of the things Jim Starlin established in that story is that Adam Warlock is a being of order and structure. If the universe were left to Adam Warlock, if he had total power and he could create the universe in his own image, it would be rigid and structured. There would be no real free thought. There would be no real freedom of choice or anything like that. There'd be no free will. And so Adam Warlock's kind of struggling with that internally in terms of, yes, I can make everything the way that I want it to be, or I can go back in time and stop this, but there's always consequences. Remember, branch universe theory. So if Adam Warlock goes back and he changes things, then what that means is there's a universe out there where he didn't change anything. And the question that has to be asked here is, which one will become the main Marvel universe? And so it's just kind of a risk. It's a gamble for Adam Warlock. But at the end of the day, what he does is he makes the choice. He disperses Gamora, sends her out there, uses the Infinity Stones, and says, like, I'm basically removing her and sending her to a place where she can quote unquote do the most good, whatever in the heck that happens to mean. And then in turn, what he does is he gives the Infinity Gems souls, right? Like, he goes right back to the point right after they get there, and he gives Infinity Gems souls. And he basically says each of these Infinity Stones can now make their own decisions. They can go live their lives freely and kind of disperse. Now, Jerry Dugan is not pulling that out of thin air, right? Like, that's one of the things that was established in Brian Michael Bendis's Illuminati run. On some degree, they have some measure of sentience because they all want to be reunited. It's one of the ways that Bendis explained how it is people always end up acquiring all the Infinity Stones. That if you acquire one of them, it will lead you to all the others. And the more you gather, the easier it will be to locate the others. Adam Warlock kind of builds on that and says, now they're sentient beings. Now they can go out there, forge their own path and do their own thing. And what it does is, again, that sets the stage for Marvel to start focusing on people arbitrarily getting the Infinity Stones, introducing new characters, some character we've never seen or heard of before, who suddenly gains an Infinity Stone. You know, the other half of this is, again, Gamora has basically been whisked off to another location. We're not sure exactly where it is, on some far-flung distant planet, where she ends up uncovering this really kind of a tomb/casket made of rock, which houses the Magus, the evil future alternate personality of Adam Warlock. And this is what I want to kind of talk about for a second. When it comes to stories that we cover, by and large, I usually try not to throw my opinion in there in the extreme, right? Like, kind of, I throw it out to you guys, explain what's going on, give you guys some history on the characters who were there, how it all kind of ties together into the history of Marvel Comics, and then you guys come to your own conclusions. But in reality, I don't know what the point of this story was, except to, I guess, maybe make money. It just kind of didn't really seem to serve a purpose, because in a nutshell, here's what happens. Gamora gets the Infinity Stones because she believes that she could fix everything. She does this by taking the main Marvel universe, folding it in half, throwing it into Soul World. This introduces Infinity Warps, basically characters from Marvel Comics, superheroes from Marvel Comics, supervillains who have been merged into a singular being, which was kind of fun, I guess, if that was your thing. What's left of the heroes basically band together and they start fighting off against, you know, what's essentially the hunger of the Soul Stone given physical form in the form of Devondra. Gamora wants to go to the Quarry of Creation to recreate everything, only to find out she can't. The heroes are still fighting Devondra for a little while. They finally make their way out. Loki's there somehow doing something, but we never find out what it is because he never does it and and then he leaves and goes home. And then the story ends. And that's basically it in a nutshell. It doesn't really seem to have served a purpose at all. And more often than not, here's one of the important things. I mean, if this is a story that's a stepping stone to something much bigger, then it wasn't really felt. Because in Marvel Comics, and really in comic books as a whole, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, the whole 9 yards, when stories are stepping stones to something bigger, then it's obvious when you feel it, right? Like you go back and you look at Chris Claremont's X-Men, it was nothing but building blocks. That's all it was. 1 builds to 2, builds to 3, builds to 4. But you go to more modern stories, and you look at these events like Loki becoming Sorcerer Supreme, which happened 3 months ago in Doctor Strange, and the stories serve the purpose of building on top of things, of setting the stage for something else, and it's tangible and you can feel it when you're reading the story. For this, like everything, like this crazy event happened and now nobody remembers and it's all basically undone. And it's kind of like, okay, so like we're right back where we started. And so it's kind of like, what was the point of it all? So I don't know, maybe one of you guys got something out of it more than I did. I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't mean to be negative and overly criticize it. It's just, as a person who's been reading comics for over 20 years, I see stories like this and they never usually bode well. They never usually have longevity because they don't lead to anything. It doesn't actually go into anything. Instead, as a story 5 or 6 arcs down the line, you can basically just say, well, you can just ignore that and pretend it didn't exist. Like it's like Spider-Verse, right? Like technically speaking, you can pretend like Spider-Verse never happened because it happened between 2 issues of Superior Spider-Man, like issue 21 and 22. Like it's not like there's an aftermath to Spider-Verse, right? It's not like Spider-Verse happens and then it has a ripple effect throughout the rest of Superior Spider-Man going into all new, all different, or I guess the return of Peter Parker and then all new, all different Amazing Spider-Man. Spider-Verse is never referenced again. I don't know. I mean, even now with Secret Empire, it's still referenced, I mean, it was referenced in the Superior Octopus one-shot for the Spider-Geddon tie-in. So again, I don't know. I mean, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. I'm curious what your take is, because again, I don't normally do this, but I don't normally read stories that end this way. Like stories don't usually happen like this in Marvel Comics. So it's kind of crazy. And again, it doesn't really seem to have served a purpose at all. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.